Hi, I'm Auntie Tam, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. Click that little bell icon so that you can get more mental health content. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. And today we are marking the beginning of our series on trauma. So I normally deal with mental health issues to do with mental health awareness, life skills, and life advice. I am not a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, or any kind of medical professional. Everything that I talk about comes from my own lived experience and the research I've done and the people I've spoken to in those fields so that I could bring you really good mental health content. If you would like to support me in creating more mental health content and better mental health content, please feel free to go into the link just in the box below. You'll find my Patreon and buy me a coffee so that if you do fancy um, pushing a few bucks my way so that I could improve my channel. And now this series, I must just tell you, we are working with trauma. And this series will be going through September and possibly October as well. And we are going to be looking at what trauma is, how to deal with it, PTSD, complex PTSD, spousal or domestic abuse, other forms of abuse, what trauma does to the brain, what trauma does to the body. And so I must just warn you up ahead that the content that you are about to see will contain quite possibly references to physical, sexual, mental, even spiritual violence against another person. It may also contain discussions on suicide. I will obviously give you a warning at the beginning of each video so that you know what to expect, because I know that some of these topics are difficult for some people to deal with and they may be disturbing for some of the viewers. So if that's the case, just click away, watch something else, watch kittens play. Wonderful. Um, you're under no obligation to watch the entire video. What I will say is that I've created the series out of my own understanding and personal experiences with trauma, and I understand how many people out there do experience it, and they're not actually aware of how it impacts their daily lives going forward. So the whole purpose of this video series is to educate people about trauma and to bring awareness to the mental health issues that can become attached to trauma. So I really hope you enjoy this series, and let's get going. Welcome to the next episode in our trauma series. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with it. When we experience trauma, the severity and the way it affects us is different from somebody else. So everybody's experience with trauma is different. And what I'm talking to you about is from my experience, from what I've seen with others, and some research I've done. I just don't want you to feel that everything I say is how it should be. That's not the case. I am really just talking from my experience and from what I feel and how I've experienced it and discussed it with others. So I don't want you to think that this is all just okay. This is gospel. It's not gospel. It's really from a place of my space, my heart, and discussions I've had with others who've experienced similar things. And one of the big things for me, especially, was after a specific traumatic event. I wanted my life back. I wanted my life to be the way it was before this thing took place. And I am pretty sure, and in my chats with other people who've experienced trauma, they also want the same thing. They've also expressed the same desire, that they wanted everything to be the way it was before whatever took place. Some people's lives were completely changed by the traumatic event that they experienced. A friend of mine experienced a, a, a life-changing motorcycle accident which has left her in a wheelchair from being somebody who was always um, full-bodied and able. She is now confined to a wheelchair with limited movement. So there can be that kind of huge, devastating impact where it actually changes your body, it changes what you can do in the world, and then that's on the physical. It can change your mind and your spirit and what you can do in the world from that perspective. And it could also just sort of have a tiny little influence. So it all depends. But honestly, when the big things happen, for example, like that motorcycle accident, although in her case she said it was actually the best thing that ever happened to her, because the changes that happened in her life after the accident were incredibly positive. But I do feel that there are people, and I'm one of them, who when horrific events have happened, terrible events, traumatic events have happened in our lives, we would like to have a reset button and then put things back the way they were before the car accident or the death of our friend or the abuse we suffered or whatever it was that happened. You can't. There is no reset button. You will not get the life you had before back. It took me many, many years to realize this. Trying to pursue a person who no longer existed, i.e. me, who I was before things happened to me. That person, I discovered, is gone. And I think part of the healing process with trauma is that we need to also mourn the loss of the person we were as to now the person that we've become. Because as I've said, it's like a wall comes down. A wall comes down in your life. And on the one side, there's the you that was before, and on the other side, the you that's after. They may be vastly different individuals, or they may be similar individuals. There may be, if you've had a big life-changing event like a divorce or the death of your life partner, there is that desire to, if there is, if it was particularly difficult, to have that person that you were before all of this happened back. You have aspects of him, yes. There are things in our lives that we simply cannot change in our personality. They are sort of fixed in. But there are other things that are mutable. And often when we experience some kind of trauma, our worldview changes. Now, we're going to be talking about this when we talk about PTSD and complex PTSD. But often when we have trauma, our worldview changes. Our view of ourselves change. We see things quite differently, particularly if there's been a betrayal involved in your trauma. That colors the way you trust people. You may have been a very trusting person before, and then the event happens, and then afterwards you're like, I don't trust anybody. So your entire worldview has shifted, and that's pretty normal, and it happens. My advice to you, having been through several of these, and I'm not joking, several of these life-changing, view-changing, tragedy, traumatic events, is to go easy on yourself. Mourn that person you were. Because in my case, I'll tell you from how I feel. I feel there was a me before and a me after. The me before, I spent so much time trying to recapture the me before. The me before who was trusting and fun and loving and all those things that a little bit naive actually. I tried so hard to recapture that person, to bring that person back to life. and it actually caused me more stress than joy. It, that person, that person is gone. Yes, I recovered a sense of fun. Yes, I recovered a sense of joy, but I'm not so naive, and that's not really necessarily a bad thing, you know. And I've had to embrace the changes that have happened. I've had to embrace the person I've become and accept who I am now, because that person I was before doesn't exist anymore. And if you think about it, even as a child, when you are a child, you grow, you become an adolescent, then you become a young adult, you become an adult. You're not really the same person you were when you were 6 years old. I mean, throughout my life, I've loved cats. I've loved cats since I was 2. That's still there. That's not gone. So there are aspects of yourself that do not change, like loving cats so much. Um, but when it comes to trauma and tragedy and difficult things that you've gone through, you are walking through a crucible. You are walking through something that is going to alter you in ways you may not expect. Some of these ways are good, like for instance, now I'm no longer so naive. I'm no longer so trusting of people, which is kind of good and bad. Um, I've become a little bit more serious than I used to be. I'll be honest with you, I used to be a bit of a wisecracker. And a lot of people who know me in real life will feel, yes, you are still a wisecracker. But for me, I feel that a lot of things within me have become a lot more serious. A lot of the changes that I've gone through have actually led me down a spiritual path. Now, people, after the event or whatever has happened in their lives, may not necessarily choose to take a positive, transformative path. They may choose to take a negative, transformative path, which means they may indulge in addictive behavior. Their lives, they may neglect things that they should be doing in their lives. They may neglect their children. They may become abusers themselves. It, so they may take an unhelpful path. I was, I think, taking an unhelpful path because I was not, no, I wasn't, using drugs or alcohol or anything. But what I did do was I spent a lot of time ruminating, going over all the events, going over everything, and delaying getting therapy, and that was unhelpful. And the moment I decided I'm getting therapy, well, I couldn't really help, getting therapy. Um, I got therapy, and then things started changing. Therapy really, I cannot tell you how much therapy can help. It is just opening up and talking about what's happened. Um, and how I got to see the therapist was I had been in an abusive relationship with a man. Um, and then about 2 years later, I'm standing in a supermarket, got my basket. In the sauce aisle. I remember it so clearly. You know, the aisle with all the sauces and the pastas and everything are. And I'm busy choosing my food. And there at the bottom of the aisle, I see a man who resembled the man who I was in an abusive relationship with. I could not move. My brain was telling my legs to move. My legs did not move. I started to shake. I started to cry. And it felt like I wanted to pee. I didn't pee, but I felt like I wanted to pee. And I was frozen in that position. And my heart was pounding, pounding, pounding. And I'm frozen in this position. And this guy is walking up and down the aisle, busy putting his stuff in the. It's not the guy who I had the relationship with. It's a completely different guy. Just resembles him. Similar jacket, similar hair, similar beard. When the guy had gone to the next aisle, Suddenly I could move. And I tell you what, I just left my basket there and I went to the car and I sat there and I cried for half an hour. I was sitting there wishing that I was the person I was before, who wouldn't just be wanting to pee herself at the sight of somebody in the supermarket. That's one of the things, you feel like you somebody who could now suddenly cry at the drop of a hat and all of this, and that's when I decided to go and get therapy. And wow, you know, life changing. But still, you become this little bundle of nerves, or you cry and all that, and you kind of like. But I wasn't a crybaby. I don't like that word, but I didn't always cry. I wasn't so emotional before. I was a lot more stable before. And, therapy can help iron out a lot of those things. Therapy can help iron out a lot of those person that I've become after aspects. But there are parts of that that linger. The, the person you were before is not coming back. That person is gone. You're a new person now. And that's a wonderful thing. Embrace that. I am a new person now. And that's fantastic. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode.